Just to introduce myself, my name is Brendan Lally. I am a member here of the careers team at the University of Limerick. So today, I suppose the objective is really to give you a formula or a structure for your job search, to answer those questions so that you know, are you doing enough? Is there anything else you can be doing? What's the formula or the path to take? Okay, so the first slide is on that topic, looking at the paths to find employment. So on average, there's 5 routes to find. Okay, so I'll just let you ponder that for a moment and consider. Probably the internet springs to mind first of all, but if you were to think, what else? What other methods or routes are there for finding employment? Okay, so I'll just show the routes. The most popular routes are adverts, recruitment agencies, speculative applications, social media, networking, and using contacts. And we will talk through those now, and we'll touch on some of those topics later in the session. So the first one here, adverts. So you can see by the little image here, it's relating to newsprint. Very, very rare now will you see any opportunities through newsprint, be it online or otherwise. But I have to acknowledge that maybe some people on this session are looking at, you know, temporary or maybe summer employment locally. So yes, you'll still see some positions in newspapers locally. But on average, it's rare to see anything at a national level. After that, then you have recruitment agencies. Recruitment agencies are paid by the employer, and it's on average 10% of your salary, from 10 to 25% of the candidate's first year salary. Depending on the experience of the candidate and the difficulty of the skill, that scale can go up to 25% or beyond. In my own background, I worked 20 years in the career and HR recruitment space. I rarely use recruitment agencies for graduates. Normally we would liaise and we would advertise with the higher education institutions, the colleges and the universities. But now you see a lot of the bigger companies will outsource entire divisions or departments to some of the larger recruitment agencies like Sigma or CPET. And I suppose graduate hire is required, it'll go through that agency. Very often with those scenarios, you are on the payroll of the recruitment agency, but you're on site for a brand, and that's very common. Then it's up to the, I suppose, host organization to decide whether they want to bring you over on their books after maybe that year or whatever contract duration there is. The middle route here is speculative applications. Now, not all companies will accept speculative applications. A lot of companies will reply to say that, look, please apply for a role if it's open. The reason for that is, you know, I suppose the storage of these applications, they don't have the resources, you know, especially big companies, constantly ad hoc resumes or CVs on a daily basis, because the numbers get huge. Every company has a slightly different process in relation to that. I will say that, you know, a lot of companies have what they call employee referral schemes, where you can, let's say if you knew somebody in the company, they could forward in your CV. If you get an interview, that person gets a bonus, some gift, or some financial reward, and if you get hired, it could be even higher. So you keep in mind that there is an incentive for people working in companies to refer your CV on occasion, depending if that's the policy of the company. Here, second from the end, is social media. And I suppose when we talk about social media in relation to finding a route to employment, as you can see from the image, we're primarily looking at the LinkedIn platform. We'll talk about that later in the session. LinkedIn sits within social media, but it's more on the professional end of the scale. And then finally, here at the bottom, networking and using contacts. And this is probably the area that we're going to spend a little bit more time on today. It's the area that's underutilized, and it is the area that can really reap some of the better rewards. But I think it's an area that daunts people, that they're not too sure how to network, or they're not very confident. So I think, despite all of the talents you may have, it is key that you keep motivated during this process. And it can be scary to reach out to people that you may not know directly. But I think it's important to be successful, to try all the routes to employment, and that includes networking. So as I say, do something that scares you. If it's not successful, you've nothing to lose. You've gained some knowledge, and you learn from that for the next time. Okay, so then moving on. As I said, I worked in industry for many years in the hiring chair, and our view is slightly different from the candidate's view. Okay, from our perspective is slightly different. There's two ways really an opportunity comes up in a company. One is what we call a backfill. So an employee has maybe got a promotion, or they have left the organization. So we look to backfill that position, okay, depending on whether we have a budget or not, okay. The other way is a new position, and that will most likely come from expansion. So we have new business in the organization, we've a new product line, we're building, adding to the facility, and we're building new teams. So that's a new position. So very often, if you start in a position like that, there mightn't be a handover, you won't be shadowing anyone. Whereas if it's a backfill, that person will likely give their notice, and ideally the employer will try and maybe bring you in before they leave, so that they can do a handover. But I'm going to show you an interesting image here in relation to the different perspectives when an opportunity arises. And firstly, we're going to look at the start here, the employer's perspective. Okay, so somebody comes into my office and tells me that they're leaving the company, they're moving to Canada, Australia, whatever. The hiring managers that I would have worked with might promote somebody internally in their team, or we might just move somebody over from another team. Okay. If that doesn't work, we will probably get CVs referred in. You see there, contacts from existing staff members. So these are, I suppose, your own friends and contacts, etc. People that you've made it known that you're interested in an opportunity in that company. So they will bring forward, some ideas, some candidates, some CVs or contacts they might have worked with in other companies. Okay, and then I suppose word goes out in the company, networking, word of mouth. So there'll be internal interest in that. A lot of companies have a policy where they advertise internally first to give the employees an opportunity, or they might advertise internally and externally at the same time. It depends on the company. If that didn't fill the role, we might look at putting it out on, some of our professional networking. So I worked in HR. We would probably, if we were looking for a HR person, share it with the professional HR body in our location, and they would put it out on the digital medium there, LinkedIn, closed groups within LinkedIn, and we'll talk about that later. If all of that didn't work and the clock was ticking and I needed that position refilled, I might then get some professional help because we're running out of time. So I might engage with a recruitment agency, okay? And I know I'll be charged a fee for that, but it'll take away a lot of the pain. They'll go through all the candidate contacts and they'll give me a final list for me to decide who to interview. And then at the top of the pyramid there, I'll also probably advertise it on a website. From the perspective of HR or a hiring manager, filling a role is quite tedious. It can go on for months. You can meet a lot of candidates and you lower the amount of candidates you're interested in. Ultimately, you can offer a position to a candidate only for them to have a counter offer. And indeed, your second standby candidate, the same thing can happen. So you can sometimes go back again. And that's why you'll see jobs go off the internet and go back on the internet. Or if it's on the internet for a long time, it'll show you that they're not having much success getting an offer accepted. Okay, so in that sense, they might be a little bit more open to diluting their requirements. Very often hiring managers will put absolutely everything on the job ad. That's not to say that they'll get a candidate with everything. So for you at home, it is important that you're not put off by job descriptions where you don't have everything. If you have the majority and you're missing one or two things, still apply, because I suppose, as I said earlier, hiring managers will put absolutely everything because they want to try and fish and get the best talent they can. Looking over here on the other side, on the right, candidates, yourselves and other graduate candidates will start typically from websites and advertisements. So you might put up a profile, you might have some alerts, and you'll apply. So we call that, I suppose, in the recruitment industry, click and pray. So you click the mouse, your resume or CV goes off, and then you sit back and you essentially you've lost control. You have to wait. Taking a little bit more action with recruitment agencies, so you might get in touch with a recruitment agency. As I said earlier, they work on a fee basis. Okay, so when you make contact with them, they will look and see if they have openings to match your background. If they do, you will get a lot more time from them. If they don't have an opening that will match you, and particularly graduate positions, companies tend to go straight to the colleges. You'll find that you mightn't get much feedback from the agencies. Okay, but again, it's important to persevere. It's important to build maybe a relationship with a recruiter that works with the brand that you want to be hired into. And a lot of that is a lot of market research to know what recruitment agencies are working with what companies. It isn't really common knowledge. Very often it's not advertised. If you, the candidate, do not hear back from any of the CVs you've sent in, you're not hearing back from the recruitment agency, you then will maybe start to network yourself. So on a normal time of the year, there'll be some events, be they on campus or off campus, professional network opportunities, careers fairs, etc. Then you will take part and you will actually be more proactive. If that doesn't work, what you will typically find then is the candidate will get more vocal. You'll start telling your friends that literally the normal avenues are not working. I need to think outside the box, so I need to do more. You might even tell relatives, you might even tell neighbors. So you'll start amplifying your requirement for a role and so forth. Okay, so it's just an interesting slide, and it's good to think from a different perspective from the employer versus where you begin your search. Okay. So moving on to the next slide, I mentioned the recruitment agency moving from the comment of click and pray, where you submit a CV and you wait for feedback. So that's what we would call reactive job search. And what we want to highly suggest you move into is a more proactive. So I mentioned going to a recruitment agency is being proactive. You know, you're actually talking to people who are in the market dealing with companies. I'm just going to show you a graph here to illuminate the difference between proactive versus a reactive job search. Okay, so up at the top, as I mentioned, you have your advertisements, you have your recruitment agencies. We have them in reactive. So though I mentioned it's proactive to be reaching out to them, why would you think I have it in reactive? Because once you engage with the agency, they say thank you very much, you must sit back and wait. Okay, very hard maybe to get through the reception when you call or send emails, and they're very, very busy. They have a monthly target to hit, a financial target. So very often, if you're not immediately placeable, they won't come back to you. So then you move on to speculative applications where you are networking. You're looking at people maybe that alumni from UL that are working in other organizations. You're on social media, so you're more active on LinkedIn. You're more vocal, as I said in the last slide. You're telling relatives, you're telling family members, you're telling other student contacts that maybe have went out in the field, and you're networking a little bit more. And that's in the proactive space. So 70% of the jobs are not advertised, okay, and that's known, what we call the hidden job market. Why are they not advertised? And there's only 30% that you're seeing on the internet, because of the earlier discussion I had on the arduous journey to fill a position. So a lot of hiring managers will, it's taken them away from the business. It's very frustrating. They can get very close to the candidate of choice only for that candidate to be hired elsewhere. And they can only give a certain amount of time to this job, open job post that's in their department. So very often then they might look internally. That might be for a CV that came in from a member of staff or somebody that maybe in their neighborhood or made themselves known, that, and they might just, have some finance or budget to maybe do a shorter contract, a 6 or 12-month contract, with a view maybe if this person worked out to go in and fill in it as a permanent hire. So the question up here is, are you spending 100% of your job search time in this space, where you're just reacting to advertisements, be they directly from a company or from a recruitment agency, knowing what you know now, that there's an awful lot of opportunity that never goes out because the company doesn't have the time to go through a nationwide comprehensive job search. So a lot of the time they will fill because it is easier, and it's a time saving. If there's projects coming and they're under pressure, they will get somebody in quick. Okay, so that's just an interesting slide, and in relation to being more proactive rather than reactive. Okay, so if you're looking at the amount of time and the activities you spend on a weekly basis in the job search, I would prefer you to be down in the lower half here. Okay, speculative applications through some contacts, getting very active on LinkedIn, and really expanding your network and reaching out and having conversations. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. And that's not to forget about your alerts and your standard and usual avenues, to continue those as well, but to be spending most of your time down here in the proactive space. And research shows that's what's going to reap the reward for you quicker. Okay, so moving on to the different, I suppose, spaces that each of you are in. We acknowledge when we go into a lecture theatre in the University of Limerick and we talk about job search, we acknowledge that not everybody is in the same space. Okay, so for this session, we're keeping that in mind. Okay, so here is typically when we have conversations in the classroom, this is the kind of response we get. You know, you have some people on the left there saying, I'm very lost. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where to begin. And I'm not feeling confident. And in the middle here in orange, you'll have some people say, yeah, I've work to do. Some companies, I have some ideas, and perhaps they did a co-op. They might return to that co-op employer at graduate level. So they're somewhere in the middle. And then on the other side, you have people who are very clear. They actually have a target company in mind, and they're pursuing that company. But they still have a work to do, and we show that on the next slide. Okay, so just moving on here. I want to bring you through, and I want to give you kind of a career planning cycle that should relieve the stress in the job search, giving you a kind of a framework to follow and a guide, and to guide you through the job search. Okay, so it starts very much with yourself. Okay, so you might wonder, well, what is yourself? Well, as it says there, you need to understand yourself. So you need to understand values, your personality traits, your strengths, your unique selling points. All of these things are very, very, very important as you move through the career cycle. If you don't have a firm understanding of yourself and you're not able to articulate that, you're going to struggle through the recruitment cycle. For example, when the opening question on a video interview or a face-to-face will be, tell me about yourself. You need to be able to express yourself and to sell yourself. Moving on from that, you look outside. You look outside yourself, you're looking out to the open market. You need to have a firm understanding about the opportunity that's out there. And I would say a realistic understanding. Very often we will get candidates and I'll ask them, you know, how open are you on location? And they may say, I'd like to stay, for example, around Limerick. And then they tell me their aspirations. And, you know, you might have to have a conversation in relation to, well, I don't think there is a lot of that type of a company in Limerick. You know, you might need to widen your net to include, you know, Cork or Galway. A lot of the road networks are improving with motorways, so it opens up new markets. So it's just thinking outside the box, but very much, you know, looking at location, looking at contract, looking at contract versus permanent, looking outside of Ireland, just really thinking outside the box. And then you'll have to make some choices and take action. So you know, we would like, you know, rather than looking at every company, narrow it down and have, you know, rank these companies and you know, address and target these companies with applications. And that will require you, as it says there, to present yourself on paper. And that's an art form. You know, that is not something that you want to leave to chance. And we'll talk later about your personal brand as you move out of the education stage of your life into a professional brand. You know, so what people think of you, what your co-op employers have to say, your part-time employers, what do they have to say about you? All of this will become important, because ultimately, if you are successful in a graduate recruitment process, there will be a reference check at the end of that. So your professional brand becomes very, very important. You'll then maybe, you know, be invited for interview, perhaps assessment centers or video interviews. So you'll have to understand how employers are going to assess you and become knowledgeable and ready. And the worst thing is to try and research all of these things the night before you have an appointment or an interview. Okay, and then ultimately, hopefully, secure success during the selection process. Okay, so let's go through these in more detail. Okay, so I talked about the different places that you personally could be right now looking at your job search. So if you're in the first piece here, which is feeling very, very lost, it is a good place to start yourself, okay, to understand yourself. And we would encourage you to take the the free tools that we have online in relation to testing, personality profiling, and hyper, where we talk of these in detail. The platform for these is from a provider we use called Team Focus. Okay, so every UL student has access to this. You just put in your student email and password here, and it gives you access into the Team Focus site. You'll come up to a page like this where you can, if you're on the right here looking for different job or avenues or career paths for your education discipline, here you can, practice in the middle some tests, some psychometrics or personality profiling. You can do some practice there. You can actually take tests here, and so this is the one that we'd be definitely encouraging you to investigate and explore. I'll look at beyond here on the next slide at some, and there are so many products and tools here that would be very, very useful for you just to get that self-awareness. And then, a lot of these will send you a report at the end of it, and that text is descriptives in relation to your skill, ability, your personality preferences. And we would encourage you to take those narratives and embed them into, descriptives at the top of your CV or at the top of your LinkedIn profile, or indeed to a response at an interview question where you're asked to tell me about yourself. So you now, you've done these evaluations, you've got some comprehensive results back, and narrative and text descriptives to describe yourself accurately. And that takes practice. One we would encourage you here is the type dynamics indicator. It's personality profile. Intune, one of the most famous in the world. If you haven't done that one yet, it's definitely an advantage to do it. Below at the bottom of the screen, there's another one or two I'd encourage you to consider. Your values. So your values are, I suppose, things that are very important to you. A lot of us are unaware of our values until maybe somebody steps on our values. Suddenly you realize that, yes, I have values, because I'm angry for some reason that just rubs up against me. A lot of companies spend a lot of time looking at their own culture and looking at their own values, and they will advertise this on a section on their website. And it's important that you look at their values and have an awareness of your own through tools that we're providing here through the UL Career Service, and be able to articulate when they ask you, why do you want to join this company? Now that you have the knowledge of your own values and your own strengths, you'll be able to say, well, having researched online your own website in relation to your company culture and values, I've looked and I've done some work myself in relation to my own values, and I feel that my values are a match for organization. The reason why is very, very attractive to a company that you that level of research in advance of applying for a position. Okay, so moving on, looking at other, I suppose, steps in the career planning cycle. So, you might have some ideas, let's say, presuming that you've done the work that we've just talked about, you've looked at yourself, you've grown your self-awareness, research what's out there, making some choices on certain companies that you're going to target. A nice quote there I like to use, and it says, one option is no choice, two options is a dilemma, three options is a choice. So I get worried when students come for an appointment with me and they tell me that they are chasing one particular brand, and the whole conversation, the whole meeting is about this brand. That is me, because having one option is a very narrow job search. I always ask them, well, if that doesn't land for you, if that doesn't happen, what is very often you will see that there is no plan B. So at the end of the meeting, typically we want them to have, you know, 1, 2, 3 options, perhaps even more, and you know, to own that and be happy with that, because your job search is not going to be a straight line. There will be curves. There's a point. It mightn't look like how you imagine, and you need to be present yourself on paper. Looking at the first one, which is research what's out there, I want to give you some ideas. Where will you find some information on the type of companies or the job titles that would suit your educational discipline? So we run publications on the back of surveys that we do on an annual basis. It's called the Graduate Outcome Survey. So when students graduate from UL, 9 months after you graduate, the UL Career Service ourselves will be in touch with you, and we'll ask, you know, about your further studies. If you're maybe studying postgrad either in UL or another institution, we'll ask you what, you know, the title of that postgrad is, the name of the institution, etc. If you're in employment, we'll ask you, you know, your salary, if you're happy to give us that, your job title, and other information. And we correlate all of that information in a user-friendly guide called Careers by Degrees, and we break that up depending on faculty. That's available online on the UL website, so you can just Google UL Careers or UL CECD for the Cooperative Education and Careers Division, and you just go under Careers Service, and I'm just bringing it up here on another screen, and you look for publications. Okay, and we'll talk about the other publications aside from Careers by Degrees in a moment. So these other publications include, we spoke about Careers by Degrees. We also have Opportunities for You, which is a publication which gives a profile of all the graduate employers that liaise with us in the Career Service and hire UL graduates, and it'll give you information in the background to their recruitment processes, what disciplines they hire. It's a very useful document, and these employers typically will attend UL Careers Fair, which annually happens in the first week of October. We also have a UL Graduate Outcome Survey, where we go into details in relation to what processes they're using to hire students. So we monitor if they're using, for example, competency-based interviews, or maybe strength-based interviews, or video interviewing, and we rate all that, and that's available again under publications on the UL Career. So these publications are very, very important, and they're a must as you start to research and build a picture of the market. There's a blog post there, and it's a hyperlink for more information about our publications. We also would encourage you to look at the 60,000 plus UL graduate alumni that have their career profiles online for you to read. This is a phenomenal tool for research on the marketplace, looking at those students that have gone on before you from the University of Limerick. So there's a URL there, and that'll bring you to the landing page of the official University of Limerick LinkedIn account. As I said, there's 60,000 UL graduates there, and you can filter by country where they are at the moment, what they studied, job titles, everything, and it automatically pulls up all of their profiles. And we have seen in recent years that students are actually reaching out to alumni, and you know, they're asking them for advice or asking them for help. Probably a bit too much of an ask to ask them straight up for a job, but certainly we've seen students that might even send them a message and say, if you have 2 or 3 minutes next week, or indeed the week after, would it be okay to connect with you? I'd love any advice you might have, would be helpful. Of course, once you're on the call with an alumni, you're building rapport, and perhaps they might then be willing to say, well, I'll take your CV. I can't guarantee anything, but I'd be happy to refer it on. So, you know, if you send out 10 connections to 10 UL alumni and 9 of them don't get back to you, I wouldn't take that personally. They could be just literally not active at that time in their LinkedIn account, or they could be on a major project and very busy. But if you've got 1 or 2 that came back, that is a success, and it's an action worth considering. Not forgetting, I suppose, below that, companies that make contact with the UL Career Service, and they self-post through a portal called Careers Connect. So the employers are on back end, and you guys are on the other side, and they put up a job advertisement for a certain period, and they take applications through that. And there's an alert system, and obviously Careers Connect has a lot more other than job opportunities. Today's event, obviously, you probably got to book it through Careers Connect. So everything that moves from a careers point of view, from ourselves and our team, it will happen through Careers Connect. Not forgetting, I mentioned earlier the UL Careers Fair, which is the largest graduate careers fair in Ireland. It happens typically, as I said, on the first week of October, and you can review their last year's employer profiles, and that's the opportunities for you document I mentioned earlier. And again, just building that knowledge of the potential brands that are hiring your disciplines. Last but not least, when you're researching, to talk to people. You know, you all have relatives, friends, and family, you know, in different industries, some local, some mightn't be local, but get active and don't be shy and talk to these people, okay? And normally, you know, these people are very, very willing to help once they know what they want, rather than Brendan is just looking for a job. That's not much information for them to go on. So it would be much better if you get them a little bit more detail, and if you had your CV ready to go, that would be helpful as well. Okay, so if you think you don't have a network, look at your smartphone and look at the amount of connections you have there. A lot of those are in organizations, and it's up to you, I suppose, to do the groundwork there and start getting in touch. Okay, so moving on. So that's, I suppose, taking action. The next stage here is presenting yourself on paper. And then, as I mentioned earlier, understanding how employers assess you to ultimately secure success. Okay, so this is the stage where your personal brand is paramount. And this follows on from the work you've done to understand yourself. So when we talk about a personal brand, we talk about your social media accounts. Okay, I remember talking to one of the larger recruitment agencies in Ireland, and when a CV comes into their system, they have an automatic widget attached to each PC of the recruiters that pulls up the social media accounts from that candidate. And again, they represent these candidates to company. They're looking at the whole picture. So your digital footprint follows you. And as you go to the market, it's very, very important to look at all your accounts that are in the public domain and presume that agencies and companies are looking at these. Okay, and that would include email addresses, absolutely everything that's in the public domain that they come across professional, the voicemail that you have on your mobile. All of these things, as you move to the external market, become very, very important. Okay, and there is a great article there under that hyperlink on personal branding that I encourage you to check out. Now, I touched on LinkedIn, and it's important that you may have an account. Okay, there's two ways I think of LinkedIn. There's two sides to the coin. One side is having a portfolio. Sorry, a LinkedIn profile. I like to think of it as a portfolio or your own personal website. That can look wonderful. It can have all the bells and whistles on it, but if nobody sees that LinkedIn profile, it is of no use. So it's only one side of the LinkedIn story to have a profile. The other side, and more important bit, is to get that profile out on the airwaves. Okay, and that means daily and weekly interaction interactions on LinkedIn, looking at more mature accounts. If you're studying, posting some pictures on some of your studies, and just raising your visibility and awareness, joining groups in relation to the area of study. And we will have LinkedIn classes online, so it's important to check Careers Connect for those, and you can log on and we go into those in a lot more detail. Finally, networking. I think I've emphasized networking more than any of the other paths for a reason. It is the most important, I suppose, route to landing an opportunity, that you know your network, that you're visible in your network, and you're active yourself in networking. And to understand the earlier slide of all the activity and opportunity that might not get out to a formal advertisement on the internet, and it can very often be filled piecemeal through connections that others had made with alumni or relatives, or indeed agencies and other avenues into companies. And there's a great article there again on networking that you should read, and it expands a lot more than we have time for today. So then the next blog article I want you to be familiar with is online applications. And as it says there, to know your deadlines. A lot of companies, particularly if there is going to be a high amount of applications, will prefer an online application rather than a CV, and they probably have applicant tracking systems to rate those. So keywords are important. And again, we talk about search engine optimization when we do our LinkedIn classes, so you learn a little bit more about applicant tracking systems through that as well. Moving on, if you're reaching out to all of these connections and in your network and growing your network, you should have your CV ready. And this is not your co-op CV. This is your graduate market, external market CV. And if it's not ready, that would probably be the first port of call. And you can again make an appointment through Careers Connect, and we'd be happy to help you with that. And we do have CV guides, and we have CV classes, and we can also do one-to-one. Our preference is that you would do one of our classes first to bring it up to a certain level, so that then we can give final guidance rather than coming, I suppose, with very little for us to work on. And then moving on, not, as it says, to be on the other side of the recruitment cycle, or the career cycle, to be knowledgeable about the methods that employers typically use to hire candidates. And they can include assessment centres. We do run mock assessment centres as part of our careers module, which is embedded in a lot of the postgrads. And employers come in and facilitate that with us. So we have knowledge in that space, and we're happy to help. And there's an article there through the hype and with more information. Finally, there a mock interview, and it's important if you are called for interview to do a mock interview. We would recommend to do the mock interview closer to the actual interview date, okay, because the learning is easier to transfer rather than just doing it anytime. It is important to realize that interviews are a two-way process, so the best preparation is to do a trial run with a member of the careers team rather than, I suppose, doing paper research, making notes for the interview and not actually verbalizing your answers, looking at your non-verbal cues, and timing is very, very important. How you can answer a question in a suitable time period. So again, mock interviews can be booked through the Careers Connect platform. And there's a nice article there on dress and recommended dress, suit up blog post to assist you on what to wear, and non-verbal body language as well for your interviews, be they on video or in person. Finally, the follow-up. So you might be finished an interview and you're not hearing back. Very often in the UL Career Service, we get queries asking us, what should I do? I did a first round interview that said that they'd be back to me shortly. It's now, it's a week, or it's a week and a half. And that's an excellent blog post that we've written. A lot of us haven't, I suppose, coming from the HR sector and seen the other side of the table. And we know, I suppose, what's a suitable amount of follow-up for a candidate. You don't want to be plaguing the employer, yet you should be confident enough to reach back and have communication with them. And we give you some guidance on that space too in the follow-up blog there in the final hyperlink. So a lot of information there, and a lot more detailed information through the various links that go back to our blog posts that we've written for you. So finally, I suppose my parting message would be, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And that relates to, I suppose, the tip of the iceberg and the hidden job opportunity that isn't out on the airwaves. But through my own experience, having worked in HR and recruitment, it's certainly there. And it is those candidates that are hustling, networking, making themselves known and visible, getting in touch, getting back in touch, that reap the rewards. It's scary, but I think you have to take risks in your job search. And if you win, you're happy, and if you don't get a result, you'll get wise, and you'll gain some knowledge. So it is definitely a win-win to do something that scares you every couple of days in relation to networking and reaching out for possible opportunities. Okay. Finally, I'd recommend to treat it like a project, your job search. You can see there just a simple template that we recommend. When you reach out to somebody, you have your contact name, the action, what I asked them. So they might be going away checking something for you, and then you might have their details there, and you might even set up an alert on your phone. You don't want to plague these people, but you certainly want to remember to go back and have a systematic approach. There's a lot of publications I talked about there with different companies, and these could be target companies. You could take that list, you could go into LinkedIn Alumni and see what UL alumni work in these companies. Start building names and taking actions and reaching out. At the end here, it's just a reminder that it is a big load to ask somebody, can you get me a job? They don't work in HR, a lot of them. They're just working in different positions. Maybe they're only a year or two in that company. So I wouldn't come out asking them for a job. Certainly, a softer approach would be, look, would you have 2 or 3 minutes to talk to me this week or next? Any advice from you would be appreciated. Okay, so that's a little, that 2 or 3 minutes is key for people who are busy, and it's very open and neutral. And it's easier for people to agree to do something like that, to take a call and give any advice they might have.